Welcome to the Platform Engineering Playbook podcast, where everything you hear is built, reviewed, and improved by AI, by me, and by you, the listener. This show keeps me, and hopefully you, up to speed on the latest in platform engineering, SRE, DevOps, and production engineering. It's a living experiment in how AI can help us track, explain, and discuss the fast-moving world of infrastructure. Every episode is open source. If you've got something to add, correct, or challenge, head to platform-engineering-playbook.com. You'll find all the content and a link to the GitHub repo. Open a pull request, join the conversation, and make the playbook smarter. Let's get into it.
Today we're diving into a controversial claim that's been making the rounds in platform engineering circles. An engineer sent me an article arguing that AWS charges 10 to 100 times more than it should. My first reaction was that's ridiculous hyperbole. Then I pulled up our actual AWS bills next to Hetzner's pricing page.
Oh boy, I know where this is going. What did you find?
An AWS C5 instance with 80 vCPUs costs between $2,500 and $3,500 per month, depending on the region. Guess what Hetzner charges for bare metal with 80 actual cores? I'm almost afraid to ask. $190 per month. That's an 18x difference. And before you say, but that's not apples to apples, I ran the benchmarks. The Hetzner box actually performs better because you're getting dedicated cores, not virtualized ones.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me we're potentially overpaying by a factor of 18? And this isn't some edge case.
That's exactly what I'm telling you. And here's the kicker. 86% of CIOs are planning some form of cloud repatriation in 2025, up from 43% just 5 years ago. This isn't a fringe movement anymore. Okay, but let's be fair here. AWS isn't just selling compute. They're selling elastic scaling, global presence, managed services. There's got to be more to the story. You're absolutely right, and that's what makes this conversation so interesting. We're going to dig into the real economics, look at companies that have actually made the jump, and figure out when cloud makes sense versus when it's, as one engineer put it, highway robbery. Let's start with the poster child for cloud repatriation. 37 Signals. They've been very public about their AWS exit. Yeah, David Heinemeier Hansen has been documenting their journey in detail. Here's the headline number. They're saving $2 million per year after leaving AWS, and they're projecting over $10 million in savings over the next 5 years. But didn't they have to hire a bunch of ops people to manage their own infrastructure? That's the surprising part. They already had 8 people on their ops team when they were on AWS. They didn't have to expand the team at all. Turns out managing AWS at scale requires just as many people as managing your own servers.
That challenges the whole serverless means no ops narrative we've been sold.
Right? And they're not alone. Dropbox saved $74.6 million over 2 years by moving 90% of their workloads off AWS. Those are massive numbers. But I want to dig into the hidden costs that people miss when they're comparing cloud pricing. It's not just compute costs. Go for it. This is where it gets really interesting. So everyone focuses on the EC2 pricing, right? But that's just the start. Egress fees are 9 cents per gigabyte. It doesn't sound like much until you realize that's $90 per terabyte. If you're serving video or large data sets, that adds up fast. And NAT gateways, $45 a month per gateway just to route traffic between your private subnets and the internet, plus data processing charges on top of that. Don't get me started on cross-AZ data transfer. You're literally paying to move data between availability zones in the same region. We've seen companies spending thousands of dollars a month just on inter-AZ traffic for their Kafka clusters. This is what bugs me about the "you're using cloud wrong" argument. Even when you optimize everything, follow all the best practices, you're still paying 5 to 10 times more than bare metal or VPS solutions.
It feels like gaslighting sometimes. Oh, your bill is high because you're not using reserved instances. Okay, we switched to reserved instances. Oh, now you need savings plans. We got savings plans. Oh, you should be using Graviton. It never ends.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. What about elastic scaling, right? That's the killer feature of cloud, right? You can scale up instantly for traffic spikes. Here's the thing, though. How many companies actually have unpredictable spiky traffic? Netflix does, sure. They're spending hundreds of millions annually on AWS, and it makes sense for them. But most B2B SaaS companies have incredibly predictable traffic patterns. That's a great point. The dirty secret is that the vast majority of companies never need to scale beyond what a couple of beefy servers can handle. That article mentioned they handle millions of requests daily on a 2-server setup. Exactly. We've been sold this idea that every startup needs to be ready to scale to Facebook levels at a moment's notice. In reality, a modern server with 128 cores and a terabyte of RAM can handle insane workloads. Okay, but what about global presence, right? If you need servers in multiple regions, cloud makes that easy. True. But providers like Hetzner and OVH have data centers across Europe and North America now. DigitalOcean has global presence. You don't need AWS to be multi-region anymore. Fair enough. What about managed services, though? RDS, Lambda, DynamoDB, these abstract away a lot of complexity. This is where the economics get really interesting. RDS for PostgreSQL costs about 5 times more than running PostgreSQL on a dedicated server. The question becomes, is that convenience worth a 5x premium? For a startup burning through runway, probably not. For an enterprise with money to burn, maybe. Let me throw another consideration into the mix here. Talent. I've heard the argument that it's easier to hire AWS experts than people who can manage bare metal. I call BS on that one. First, the engineers who can properly architect and manage AWS at scale are just as rare and expensive. Second, modern tools have made server management way more accessible. The article mentions using ChatGPT and Claude to help with Linux administration. The gatekeeping around you need 20 years of Linux experience is outdated. That's a hot take, but I think you're right. I've seen junior engineers spin up and manage Kubernetes clusters on Hetzner using tools like K3s and Terraform. The automation tools have gotten really good. Plus, let's be honest here, managing a few physical servers is often simpler than managing a complex AWS setup with dozens of services, IAM policies, VPCs, and all that complexity. All right, so we've established that cloud can be 10 to 100 times more expensive, and many of the supposed benefits don't apply to most companies. But there must be scenarios where cloud genuinely makes sense. Let's build a framework here. Absolutely. Cloud makes sense when you have truly unpredictable, spiky workloads. If you're running a Super Bowl ad or launching on Product Hunt, cloud is perfect for that. Also for startups in the very early stage. If your AWS bill is under $10,000 a month, the operational overhead of managing your own infrastructure probably isn't worth it. Use that time to find product market fit instead. I agreed. I'd also add that cloud makes sense for companies that need to be in 20 plus regions globally. At that scale, managing your own global infrastructure becomes a real challenge. What about regulated industries that need specific compliance certifications? Sometimes cloud providers have those certifications that would be expensive to obtain yourself. Good point. Though, interestingly, some regulated industries are moving away from cloud for data sovereignty reasons. The EU is getting strict about where data is stored and who has access to it. So let's flip it around. When does it make sense to consider leaving the cloud? The magic number seems to be around $10,000 to $20,000 in month in cloud spend. That's when the economics of managing your own infrastructure start to make sense. You can hire a part-time ops person or dedicate an engineer to it. And if you have predictable workloads, if your traffic patterns are consistent, you're leaving money on the table by paying for elasticity you don't need. Also, if egress fees are killing you, if you're serving lots of video, images, or large files, the bandwidth costs alone can justify it moving off cloud. Let's talk about the hybrid approach, because I think that's where most companies should actually land. Yes! This isn't binary. Keep your predictable base workloads on dedicated servers or cheaper VPS providers, and use cloud for burst capacity and managed services where they actually provide value. We have a client doing exactly this. They moved their main application servers and databases to Hetzner, saving about 80% on those workloads. But they kept Lambda for event processing and CloudFront for CDN.
That's it for this episode of the Platform Engineering Playbook podcast. Every topic, transcript, and summary you just heard lives out in the open at platform-engineering-playbook.com, where anyone can suggest updates or add insights through GitHub. If you've got thoughts, fixes, or new ideas, open a PR. And if you enjoyed the episode, rate us on your favorite podcast platform. We're always shooting for 5 stars. While you're there, give the project a star on GitHub. It helps others find and contribute to the Platform Engineering Playbook. This podcast is generated by AI, reviewed by AI, me and you, a community of engineers keeping our craft sharp. Thanks for listening, and see you next time inside the Platform Engineering Playbook.